Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our exclusive webinar with CellSite Solutions, Jim Patterson, CEO. We're excited to have you with us today. My name is Shiloh Vance, Director of Marketing here at Indatel. Just as a reminder, this webinar will be recorded and sent out after the fact for those of you that want to view it at a later point or maybe share amongst your teams. I know it's going to be a lot of great, valuable content for us today. As always, just a couple of housekeeping notes. Please feel free to use the chat function if you have any questions throughout this presentation, or the raise hand feature in Teams, just to keep things in good order. If you have any questions, just let me know. And Jim, I'm going to leave it to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. Shiloh, thank you very much. And thanks to Indatel for having me on. It's absolutely terrific. So I came to CellSite on the advice of a friend of mine, because I'm a 30-year veteran of the industry. I've been around the telecom industry, but all on the service provider side, so none on the supplier side. So I've worked with many of the Indatel members when I was either at Sprint or at FastWire and other roles across the industry, but never on the supplier side. So this is all new to me as far as being at a supplier end. But I want to reiterate, this is a fascinating company. The work that they do in the industry is absolutely terrific. And I came up and I really had a chance to kind of see the operation firsthand. So a little bit about what CellSite does. Their primary business is actually taking telecom shelters, which previously were at the base of cell sites. And they take those, usually the trigger event is you have a merger going on, or somebody's just changing out a shelter for various reasons. And the wireless tower operator calls us and says, hey, CellSite, we either need you to refurb this on site, or we need you to haul it away. Mm-hmm. Most times they're asking us to haul it away, just because the nature of how the industry works right now. But occasionally, and we'll talk about one later, where we actually will refurb on site. But we put it on truck, and we'll describe it here briefly. We put it in truck haul, but the primary business that we have is actually doing the remanufacturing itself. We bring it back to Cedar Rapids, we bring it into our warehouse, and again, we'll describe that. But then from there, that actually facilitates the growth of critical infrastructure for fiber to the home providers, whether you're electric co-op or you're a fiber to the home provider, a small municipality or a fiber to the home provider will actually deliver it. And in some cases, many cases, we have a whole division that just does civil construction. So they'll actually go and pour the pad and put in the fence and put in the security that's needed, and actually make sure that when the shelter comes on the truck that's been completely remanufactured, and we'll describe what that means in a second, that it's actually delivered on time and to spec.
So it's a whole turnkey operation from start to finish.
Definitely is. The company's been around 15 years. Not quite 100 employees, but almost 100 employees. Most of those are in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. But they've got three primary divisions. The first one is what I just described, which is, and we'll go into more detail on this in a second, which is shelter remanufacturing. And we're the largest in North America. It's a combination of complete, and remanufacturing is probably the right word, completely changing shelters that we pick up and then distribute them back out, predominantly to Indatel members, fiber to the home companies, utilities, other transportation companies, even back to the tower companies that we might have taken the shelters from in the first place. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit of mixture of each, but that's one. And then as a result of, and we'll talk about this here in a second, as a result of kind of the business that we're in, we're frequently asked to either decommission cell sites, or literally the area where the shelter sits, decommission that particular portion of the site, or when we go and install a new site, to do all the civil construction, so that the customer can just have us literally provide a turnkey solution for them. Mm-hmm. On top of that, a little bit of legacy part of the company is in the Pacific Northwest. We actually still climb cell towers and do all the things that you kind of think of when you think of a cell site. As I always say, things above 6 feet, 6 feet off the ground. We do a lot of those too. So it's kind of three divisions of the company, been around 15 years, predominantly in Cedar Rapids. Mm-hmm. And the vast majority of our revenue that we have today kind of comes from that civil engineering or civil construction side, or shelter remanufacturing.
Okay,
There's a little video that I think it would be convenient and interesting to kind of show. It's kind of hard because when like we couldn't bring this to your show back in June, but here's a little bit of a description. Here's what happens first, and for those of you on the webinar, you're kind of seeing this. There's this process we call it craning and then loading, right? So we literally go out to a cell site. Let's say the trigger event is Sprint's merging into T-Mobile, right? So when they do that merger, there's one less shelter need at that particular cell site. Power company usually calls us and says, hey, I need one of two things. I either need you to refurb it, and we'll talk about a refurb, more of a really cool example of refurb, but we do refurbs all the time on site and do that for mainly wireless tower companies, but we do it for, telcos as well. Or they call us and say, hey, we need you to take away this shelter. Can you get there? Can you take it away for us? And that picture kind of shows, and we have kind of a whole animation here that shows it actually getting on a truck. And this is an important thing because I don't realize all of this, but that's 20 to 40 tons of concrete that you're hauling, say from California back to Cedar Rapids.
That's no small feat.
It is no small feat at all. And there is a big logistical company. We call this a landing cost, right? The landing cost of that shelter is a key portion, the key thing that makes us different. And we haul a lot of shelters around, hundreds a year. And we bring that back to our warehouse. We have a very large warehouse in Cedar Rapids, all under roof, and literally it comes in on the truck. The truck literally comes into the warehouse, and we have this giant gantry crane, and the gantry crane takes the shelter off and kind of pops it into its own little position. Most of the time when we bring a shelter to Cedar Rapids, we already have an order for it.
Really?
Which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But the thing that's important to understand is that order is unique to that customer. And that customer has said, I want the door here, I want this inside, I want this much amperage, I want this type of HVAC sitting on the end. Obviously, they're going to say, I want this particular size. Sometimes we'll have some other customized features that we'll do. Sometimes they want an awning over the door or certain types of lighting or things like that. Sometimes they want certain types of ISP inside. And so as the picture shows, we almost every time we're putting on a new roof. Because that's the first thing to go on most older shelters. Put on a new roof, it's warranty 10 years, it's great. Almost every time we're putting in a new floor. Another thing that goes a lot in an older building, so you fix those right away. Then you got the four walls, and the four walls, as you can see here, we do a lot of work to those four walls. Sometimes we had one in the factory this week that had an ant infestation, right? It was kind of nice, picturesque.
Was that a surprise for your team when they opened it up?
No, they're not surprised by anything, frankly. We see all sorts of things that come out of shelters, and I have many stories to tell about that, but we'll not bore the participants with all the stories. But there are things. Many of our shelters that we get, not all of them, but many of the shelters that we get are truly in need of full gutting, and we do that. And about, call it 6 weeks later, it's gone from kind of ugly duckling to beautiful swan, right? You can't tell outside of maybe a few exterior things. Everything has been changed out in that. All the electrical has been changed out. It's got brand new HVAC. We've rebuilt walls where we could, and we built it to your spec as a customer. So if you said, I want this ISP racking in there because I'm going to have a partner that is a hyperscaler or a content provider, or I need a gen room that does this, and I need a separate gen room because that's the way it needs to be. It's usually a much bigger shelter, but we do those, and we build all of that to spec, and then it leaves our factory. Oh, we inspect. We do lots of inspection. There's some ISP example. We put it on a truck, and we take it back to the site. Okay. And about half the time, not quite half, but about half the time, we're also, meanwhile, at the new site, pouring the concrete pad, putting in the fencing, putting in the grounding, getting it all ready to go, because our customers increasingly are asking for just give me the shelter on a pad. give it to me. You know, they're not ordering 50 of these. They might be ordering 5 or 6 or 7, and they just want to have somebody they want a single throat to choke on this.
Right.
And if it's we do installs all over the country. We're just getting ready to do some in Maine. We're doing some in Massachusetts. We're doing some California, Arizona. So we do it all over the country, and a little bit in Canada, a little bit in Mexico. So, but mainly in the U.S. And that's a little bit. We'll put a little bit more of this out here, but that's a little bit about what the company does.
Now, I'd love to go back to you mentioned on average, it's about 6 weeks.
About 6 weeks.
How does that compare to somebody who's one brand new?
Yeah, it depends on how big you are, right?
Yeah.
So we compete against some, a lot of the new guys compete against cabinets as well. And it depends on the size, but if you're just ordering 1 or 2, most of the times you'll go to a new shelter provider and they'll say, that's great. Where are we at? Mid-September. They would probably say, we can probably guarantee that you'll get a shelter mid-April.
Oh my goodness. So probably well after you already need it.
So we're actually taking orders now for deliveries so people can hit their end of year household pass goals or end of year network goals. So we're now delivering into November, but we're delivering in November.
Exactly.
Which is great, which allows the shelter to be set. If we do the civils, we can kind of make guarantees on those dates as long as the permits and site act is done. But we can help people meet their goals, not only for the end of this year, but their goals, get a head start on 2025.
That's a big deal. No, we look
It
for
is.
that in all of our partnerships. Those are proactively thinking ahead for things like that and filling a need. I mean, nobody wants to wait 6 months or more for a product if we can help it, right?
Well, and it's the nature, and it's only going to get worse, right? So we've just gone through middle mile funding, and a lot of your members obviously are beneficiaries of that, but their customers are now getting into this next round of funding, whether it's they're working on enhanced ACAM, or they're working on BEAD, or they're working on new reconnect grant cycles, whatever that is. There's more demand coming for either cabinets or shelters, and that's only going to get worse, and those deliverables are only going to get tighter and tighter. So we like our advantage, and we do have a very good, very durable shelters with warranties, which are good, and very good timelines.
That's excellent. I'm happy to hear it.
Yep.
Now, you've mentioned you work with several of our members. That is part of why you're a trusted supplier affiliate. We've heard nothing but great things from the members that currently do business with you.
Yeah.
For members that don't and are curious, what department should they be talking to within CellSite?
So we've restructured kind of how we've done sales. So we took some guys who were really, really talented, who had been running the operation, and we said, let's allow them to support, because we're seeing an increased complexity in terms of what they want inside. And because we want to meet the customer exactly where they are and meet their spec exactly where it is, we've seen demand for more complex things going inside. And then on top of that, as I just said, we're seeing more demand for turnkey. So we have a very, very good sales group. Gary represents Indatel, so we'll give his contact info here in the follow-up. But Andrew Gallagher is there as well, Pat Healy, and others that are really working on a bunch of, with a bunch of different clients. And again, we serve co-ops, we serve Indatel, we serve Indatel members, we serve folks across the industry. We've had, I think since 2019, we've had close to 150 different carrier customers as customers.
Wow.
So we've delivered to, I think 42 states since 2019. So it's a large operation. You just never heard of us, which is great in one sense, because we do really good work and we're pretty quiet about it.
Right.
But in the other sense, there's a lot of Indatel members we think we could still do a lot of work with.
Absolutely. Well, and we're excited to help shout it from the rooftops, because we haven't heard, I mean, we all know, we hear complaints a lot louder than we hear compliments, right? So the fact that I haven't had a single member come to Justin on our team or anybody else saying that you guys are a pain to work with, it is a great, great thing. So we don't take that lightly. We're happy that you're here sharing what you guys can offer our membership today.
Let me take you through a quick example, if it's okay. we just brought this slide up. We get this is in 2022. We get this crazy call from Verizon saying a truck had run into one of their shelters.
Oh.
And that literally, you can see on the before picture, that's literally what it looks like. So this is in the Northeast, I think it's Massachusetts, and then we get this call and they're like, hey, can we get a new shelter? And we're like, sure, yeah, we'll fix one up for you. We'll have it to you in a few days. We can really expedite stuff if we need to. And they're like, actually, you're going to need to come redo this one yourself because it was the perfect storm of shelters, which we don't get too much. So we're happy when we have one, it was nestled in between a building with power lines hanging over top. All the things that could happen happened. Believe it or not, this is it went from before to after in 1 week. That's exactly. So we put in new HVAC, we completely restored the shelter, put new awning, put new door, and we did it all while the equipment inside was still running.
You did that in under a week.
Under a week.
Did you have
while it's all
people
still
doing
running.
this round the clock?
We were working hard. Yeah,
Wow.
working hard. Yeah, we have an on-site remanufacturing team that is second to none, and they do excellent work. We do inspection. We do kind of the gamut of things. It's not just refurb, but we'll do HVAC swaps and other things for folks. But it's this is just kind of an extreme example of kind of the lengths to which we go and provide our expertise. And I think we actually sent some guys from the floor actually out there. So we have guys who do hundreds of HVAC installs. So they know each size, single stage, dual stage. We have variable speed. They know all the ins and outs of the HVAC. And HVAC's a really important part of the shelter, right? So, but we have master electricians and we have master HVAC folks that work this all the time. So I think we sent out a couple guys that just knew exactly what to do. We were able to get a couple new walls put together, and it was cool.
That's fantastic. That paints a phenomenal picture.
That gives you it's a little more of an edge case, thank God. Right. But it was a really, really good example of what the team can and does. Some variance on that every day.
Absolutely. Well, and it's impressive. You mentioned your 15-year-old company.
Yep.
Close to 100 people.
Yep.
And when disaster strikes, you're able to get the top tier of your team out there and get the job done in under a week. That had to have made Verizon pretty happy.
Very happy. Very, very happy. Pretty thankful customer in this case. Yes.
Right. Absolutely.
Because that's the unexpected.
Of course.
The other aspect of the company is, and it's a pillar of the company because we start with 4 walls. For the most part, we're taking out the other 2 sides, but we're starting with 4 sides at least. Again, not all of them are infested with ants or other things that have. Many of them are in pretty decent shape. We don't consume as much energy to deliver you a project, a finished product, as you would see in a new, right? So new one, you actually have to create new cement walls. We don't have to do that. In fact, most cases, we're doing things to the walls because we're taking, we're configuring it. All the cutouts are exactly the way the customer wants it, but we're not having to reconstruct every wall all at the same time. So as a result, kind of by our estimate, and we've had some folks kind of validate this, it takes about 60% less energy for us to do what we do to deliver, say, a 10 by 20 shelter than it would for a new manufacturer to produce a new 10 by 20 shelter.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. So there are some of our larger customers who have sustainability goals. They have owners who are, very, very concerned about that. We give a pretty good story, right? Yeah. In the process of doing this is just our year-to-date numbers. Year to date, we've recycled 363,000 pounds of copper and metal already this year. We've saved last year we saved 20 tons of shelters from either the concrete recycling plant or the landfill, right? So really they would have just sat at the CellSite and probably just gathered dust for a little more time. But, we put them back to reuse, and reuse is a really, really important part of what we do as a company.
Absolutely.
And it's for those Indatel members who really want to tour, we're glad to host you. And you want seeing is believing. You'll get to see it done. Right now we're working on about 35 shelters. At any given time, as many as 50 shelters at any given time. We are working really hard on them. So whether it's gutting them or putting in new HVAC or putting in new electrical, we're building them to the customer's needs.
That's impressive. I mean, I guess it's ingrained in my brain that new typically means more energy efficient, but you guys are cutting down the resources needed to do this by quite a bit by being able to reuse so much of it.
And in turn, because our cost basis is going to be less than brand new, we're able to take some of that cost savings and dedicate it towards things that create more energy efficiency. So,
like what?
Well, we're working with a company right now who does a coating that will help us reduce the amount of UV penetration, for example, by putting a special coating on the outside of the shelter. We haven't done that for every customer yet, but we'll be offering that here in the near future. It also allows us to really focus on our relationships, not only with HVAC providers, but with folks who do ISP equipment and folks that do generators and other things to allow us to provide a very cost-effective solution. This is what our customers tell us. Our shelters, when we bid, say a 10 by 20 versus new, we tend to come in about 30% less than a new shelter, yet we're offering warranties many times, not all the time, but many times that are better than new.
Now, you're going to have to dive into the warranties. I'm curious. I know our members are going to be curious because not only are you cutting the time drastically from order to install, but you're saving energy.
Usually we're about, what's to say, 4 to 6 months faster if it's on a small quantity. Now, if you're in a larger quantity, it's going to be more equal, right? But if you're a onesie twosie, which many of your members probably aren't ordering 6 or 8 shelters at a time, they're probably ordering 1 or 2. We're going to be faster because we have a factory that can and a remanufacturing facility that can accommodate that growth.
That's fantastic.
Yep.
So let's talk about warranties.
Sure. We put on a brand new floor. We have a lifetime warranty on the floor.
No matter the location.
No matter the location. Could be Louisiana, which I know very well from my previous employer. Could be Alaska. Could be Upper Midwest. Could be Pacific Northwest. We warranty the floor for life.
Fine.
We put a new roof on. We have a roofing company that we work with that is based in Cedar Rapids. It's think of it as almost like a membrane roof that we put on top. We technically don't take off the old roof, but we put a new roof on top that they warranty for 10 years. We've had very, very, very few claims against that roof in the 15 years that we've used them. So it's very good. And then we work very diligently with, and we'll just kind of stay tuned on some future warranty announcements with our HVAC partners. But we work very hard with them, and because we do so many with them, we're always trying to work with them to try to, find things that we can include in our baseline pricing that allows us to extend the warranty. And no one likes to try to guess when the warranty starts and ends.
Right.
We're working on that to try to make it more simple, more straightforward, more accommodating of the customer, as opposed to having the customer guess when their warranty starts and what's covered and all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned on that. I don't have anything to announce today, but very shortly we will be able to announce that.
I'm excited.
The big thing going on affecting all of the industry, and this is more I'll call it early 2025 thing, is the entire industry is going through the coolant that's used in the HVAC unit is changing. So we went through a big one in 2009, 10. We kind of got rid of the Freon and moved over to a newer one. I think we have it in there. And then now the new one is moving to what's called R454B coolant, and that's going to be a big change. And we're committed to be early in that process, as our HVAC providers are, and because we figure that our customers don't want to get stuck with yesterday's coolant, because we all know what happened in the Freon days. It looked really good for about 3 years, and then after that, the price of if you ever had to replace any of that Freon, it was crazy high. So we're trying to get ahead of that, try to manage costs, again, because we have a pretty good cost advantage over new, we can do some things there that maybe help us have it, extend our advantage in the marketplace. We do a lot with just, the other key thing is we do a lot with LED lighting. We do a lot, we're taking out all the incandescents. We're being very responsible in how we dispose of those assets. And we work very closely. We happen to have a really, really good recycling group in Cedar Rapids that not just us, but the other industries in Cedar Rapids work with. So they're a real blessing to work with. And as a result, we give them a lot of things. So
that's great to hear. I love it. Now, can you tell me a bit about the services that are associated surrounding shelter remanufacturing?
Sure. So as I said before, and again, it's not quite half the time, but close to half the time that somebody orders a shelter from us, they say, can you also handle the install?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it's not needed and we're cool with that. But the point is if we can help you alleviate, it's the project manager at that point, alleviate project risk. And we have very good relationships. If we're not doing it ourselves and we have our own crews for certain, I'll call it nearer to Iowa things, we try not to throw those people to, Florida and Southern California from Cedar Rapids, unless it's the winter, and then they love it.
Oh,
but we try not to throw them there just as a matter of course of business. Mm-hmm. But we really, really try to use our own resources wherever we can. Mm-hmm. And that, again, you're getting the best that we can throw at it. This happens to be a picture of one that one of our customers is doing, but we do all of those services. So we do, well, let me put it this way. Here's what we don't do. That's probably the better way.
Better, yes.
We will not do site acquisition. You got to get your own land. Okay.
That's fair.
That's fair. And then we strongly encourage our customers to get their own permit. Mm-hmm. I don't want to do permit transfer. So that can get kind of ugly at the end. So we after that, we'll take over. Mm-hmm. We'll do everything else. You need the land ready. You tell us what you want. If you don't know what you want, we'll suggest, which is what we do pretty well. And we'll gladly do it for you. And we don't just do it for our own shelters. If you had picked another shelter manufacturer, let's say you have 15 and you're going to give us 5, but for size reasons or just preference to have new, you want the other 10 done. We do the other 10, and we did it for
really?
We did it for one of your members, Range, out in Wyoming. They needed a bunch done, and we did all. There was only one that they got from us, but they got a few others from another company, and we just managed the whole thing for them. So it was good.
You guys just continue to make it more simple and more simple. I love that.
Well, you want to make sure it's done right.
Exactly.
It's kind of hard to. I can't emphasize it enough. You could have a perfect shelter and a poor pad, and you're living with that for 20 years. That could be really, really bad.
Exactly.
So it's like having a great mattress and a horrible box spring and foundation. And you're like, why is it so bad? Well, it's because you're kind of missing the part. You didn't invest in the parts that mattered.
Exactly.
You have to invest in the whole project.
Exactly.
And that's we can alleviate that headache, and we do it well. We're very, very cost effective, very timely in all of this. And where we don't use our own, we have relationships with the folks that do this in all 50 states. So
that is no small feat. That's impressive.
Yep.
Well, can you tell me a bit how the Indatel relationship benefits CellSite?
Yes. Well, as I said, the Indatel members, again, come from the industry, but done a lot of work in the industry. The Indatel membership is at this very unique place, and the uniqueness of that place is they're the first recipients really of what we call infrastructure funding right now, and we see this as an opportunity. We only do business with a few of the Indatel members, and so we're very excited about getting to work with more of them. What we're seeing, and again, we benefit from serving all segments that need some sort of telecom or utility shelter. So we see the growth of the electric co-op. We see the growth of fiber to the home providers, right? We see the growth of municipal. we see the growth across all of these different areas. On top of this, the growth of wireless just in general and the growth of C-band deployments and other things. I mean, we see all of that as well. But we, Indatel is at a very pivotal part, and actually they're not just their member owners, which are about to see a wave.
Mm-hmm.
And again, some of that'll be cabinets, some of that'll be shelters, but there's, we see ourselves as playing a critical role in that. On top of that, you have these other trends that are going on in the marketplace, which is everybody wants their content as close to the customer as humanly possible.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that works great in a Kansas City, right? It's gonna work great in a St. Louis. It's gonna work great in New York City. But when I get to San Jose, Illinois, or I get to, Autumna, Iowa, or I get to Bassett, Nebraska, right? You're gonna get to some areas where it's just gonna be a lot harder.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, how do you position your content as close to the customer as possible? And that's where one of your members, say somebody like Optic or Arion or Aurora Networks, they're sitting in the middle of this, able to actually deliver content to rural America, where it might be cost ineffective to put it in every 200 member or 300 home town.
Right.
So
Impressive.
yeah, so we're very excited by the opportunities that are there.
Likewise. No, we've heard nothing but amazing things from our members that currently do leverage you guys as a partner, and it's great to hear.
Great.
Now, going back to your experience before coming to CellSite, you're best known for your leadership at both Sprint and FastWire. How have your decades of experience as a service provider helped you prepare to run a remanufacturing company as unique as CellSite?
One of the things that's interesting, and by the way, I walked into, again, I just started in mid-June,
Mm-hmm.
so I walked into and it's just fascinating to be able to be a part of a manufacturing, in this case, a remanufacturing operation. It's just fascinating. I have never had a chance to do this before in my career, and it's absolutely terrific. Everybody who's working, I don't know, I just like going down on the floor every morning and talking to the guys, kind of finding out what's going on, finding out who this customer's for, where this, we have trucks running through all day long. Where's this one going?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of cool, because you're changing and you're helping to expand our broadband infrastructure, kind of one shelter at a time, which is kind of neat. The thing I think that's unique to the table is I bring the other side of the table, right? So at FastWire, there's a lot of things you have to do when you're managing rollout of fiber to the home in the market, and frankly, the shelter gets some attention, but it doesn't get as much attention as, say, the guys who are actually deploying mainline, right? Mainline is the fiber that is either on poles or underground. That's you're pulling hundreds of miles of that in many small towns. That's getting a little bit more attention because that involves a lot more labor.
Right.
But the neat thing about it is, in many cases, not all cases, but in many cases, they all need a shelter.
Mm-hmm.
So I can kind of be unassuming on one end, but yet be able to understand and share the pain that they're experiencing on these fiber deployments on the other end. Because, FastWire, we rolled out many, over 100,000 homes last year. So it was a lot of work. And it's, the shelter piece is important because as a fiber to the home provider, you want to make your service shine.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means you can put a Netflix server in or an Amazon Outpost server in or something else into your local infrastructure, you have enough space, you have enough racks to be able to do that, you have enough power to accommodate that, you're going to have a leg up on whoever your competition is. And that's kind of cool too.
Not just kind of, it's absolutely
cool.
I love it. It sounds like you were bringing every piece of the puzzle with your experience to CellSite, and that's exciting.
That's what 30 years does. That's what 30 years does.
Now, I do have to ask you this. And this is just not necessarily this particular industry specific, but there's people out there that always believe new is better or best.
Uh-huh.
What would you say to them for something remanufactured?
I would use the phrase seeing is believing, right? We have had a lot of, we did, I think since I've been here, we've done 8 plant tours.
Mhm.
And I would say, come see us.
Mhm.
Because it'll change your mind about kind of what's going on. We get a lot of folks that say, it's just not gonna be as durable. I don't care what warranty you put in, it's just not gonna be as durable.
Mhm.
We can show them shelters that have been out there, 10 years ago, because the company's been in business 15 years, or 12 years ago, or 14 years ago, and show that there's been no material wear on the shelter at all. We can show them ones we've done 5 years ago in high impact climates,
Yep.
Arizona, Texas, whatever. We can show that they've held up very, very well. Very, very well versus new. So and then we take them through each step of the process that we go through.
Mhm.
And between that and the fact that it's customized and the fact that it's less of a risk, right, than new, because it's 30% less cost
Mhm.
on average, and it kind of makes the case for us,
Mhm.
right? And we may not win every shelter in the bid, but we're winning most of the shelters in the bid because everybody has a household pass, cost per household pass they have to meet.
Mhm.
That's being underwritten, and we're one way. Not just that, but also where we can help them meet their timeline faster
Mhm.
than many of our competitors.
Oh, that's great to hear.
It's good.
I love it.
It's good.
Do we have any questions coming
The
through?
ones you have.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you to those that submitted these questions ahead of time. We greatly appreciate it. Can you tell me a little bit about the trends you guys are seeing in this space?
Yeah, and this actually comes from some I can't tell you who we talked to, but this comes from some conversations with several Indatel members.
I
So
believe that.
one of the Indatel members came to us and said, "Hey, Jim and Gary," right? Said, "Hey, we thought when we were doing our planning that we were gonna need 9x16 shelters, or we thought we were gonna need 10x20 shelters. And all of a sudden, this little company, let's just say they're a well-known content social media company maybe, or
Okay.
maybe known for their streaming services, or somebody else kind of came in and said, we want into your shelters. And there's not enough racks. So we're gonna need a larger shelter, we need a second shelter or something like that, or when we're planning." So I would say right now that the biggest trend we're seeing, now we have 3 standard sizes, 9x16, 10x20, 12x20s. Those comprise the vast majority, and that would be for new guys too, the vast majority of what you're seeing in the industry. But then we're seeing this scale of very large shelters.
Uh-huh.
And for remanufactured, since we pull from these cell sites like we described, we're scouring to find 12x28s and 12x30s.
Mhm.
We're finding them, but it's a lot harder to find than if somebody's looking for 1 or 2. They're coming to us with 10 or 20, right? I mean, it's a little bit harder to find. And what I would say is double check your demand set because 2 shelters do cost more than 1,
Mhm.
right? And they're harder to operate than 1, right? In many cases, not always, but in many cases. And I would say maybe think about 1 shoe size larger, right? So if you're thinking about 12x20, think maybe about 12x28,
Yeah.
right? So if you're thinking about 12x28, think about 12x30. If you're thinking about 9x16, think about 10x20s, right? So just plan on the fact that there's going to be a lot more demand, and therefore potentially more revenue opportunities because they're not getting in for free, right? There's going to be a lot more demand for content that sits closer to the customer
Mhm.
than you think.
Absolutely. No, that makes absolute perfect sense. I mean, thinking about the demand you need today versus 5 years from now, that's everything.
It's hard because we all can sit back 10 years, I always think about my time at Sprint when I call it the aha moment, right? Which is when Facebook started saying, "Hey, you can upload pictures," right?
Yeah.
And the guys in the wireless world were like, "Wait a second, we didn't kind of engineer the network for 4 megapixel, or 4 megabyte pictures being uploaded hundreds of times in this town every day, right? And then it became thousands, and it became tens of thousands. So that you're going to see you're going to see that demand start to change, just like we saw here. You're going to see that. You're going to see a lot more intelligence needed. And And as we're also seeing, a little bit more need, even if it may not be tonnage heavy latency needs. So gaming, the more people need a response right away, not just the ping to say you can start downloading this or start streaming this movie, but more immediate responses.
Yep.
That's gonna, that triggers a need to have that server a little bit closer to customer. I think you're gonna see more of that happening, not less, for sure. I think you can kind of take that trend to the bank.
Oh, I am right there with you. I mean,
I'm not trying to push customers into larger shelters. You just said, what trends do you see? I don't see any, I really don't, outside of, and we deal a lot with the 911 community, because obviously shelters are needed as people are doing 911 upgrades. But outside of that, pretty much everybody, no one's saying,
give me less.
I need to downgrade my shelter size. I don't think I have to ask my sales team. I don't think we've gotten many shelter downgrades recently, to say, I really just need a 9x16. I don't need a 10x20. They're more like saying, I need a 10x28. I told you I needed a 10x20, but I need a bigger one now because I have a new tenant, as they like to say.
Well, now you have me curious if you guys have ever even gotten that request, because the only reason I could think of is if a town went unincorporated, because of course, it's probably less need then, but still, who's gonna make that?
I don't know, Shiloh.
You don't have to answer
I don't know, Shiloh, of any, but I'm not gonna say it's never happened, but I would say it's rare. Very rare.
That makes sense.
Very.
Excellent. Well, I mean, we're getting into an interesting season of weather here in the Midwest. I mean, should disaster strike, do you guys keep them on hand? I mean, minus the extreme customization on
We
the.
talked about the Verizon one, which is kind of weird. That's not weather, that's a truck.
True.
But that was a catastrophe, unfortunately. Active truck, as I like to say, as opposed to active God. We occasionally sell we occasionally decommission a lightweight shelter.
Mhm.
We occasionally have a lightweight shelter that we'll pass on. We tend to build everything to spec.
Okay.
But we can turn stuff around very, very quickly. If you said I needed it next week, I'd be a little tricky right now, but if you said I needed it in 2 weeks, we could probably figure out how to make it work.
Okay.
But it just depends on the size, kind of what we have. We don't have a lot sitting around in our yard.
Okay.
We have some, maybe a dozen, 15 that are kind of what we call odd lot sizes, but pretty much the standard sizes. As soon as we get them in from decom, we're putting it into the remanufacturing facility. It's a part of the 40 or 50 that we have in there at a given time, and then they're getting trucked out as soon as I can get them out. Yeah.
That's impressive. I mean, it's good to know that in the event of an emergency, it's possible to have one in under a month. I mean, that's impressive to have those resources.
We're probably just as fast remanufacturing it on site as well. So just think about that.
Yeah.
By the way, we hope that we don't have to do that in Louisiana. So it's, we've got real live things going on right now. We're in constant contact, not only related to this, but other storms. Unfortunately, storms trigger on-site remanufacturing, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
We do it a lot.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned, sounds like several of our members are more onesie-twosie orders, right? What about our members who are considering maybe some volume pricing or volume options with you guys?
Yeah, so we like, we like to plan for those, right? So we tend to work on a spec. Usually what we find, let's say somebody needs 10 to 12. They'll usually say there are 3 that are gonna need this size, and there are 5 that are gonna need this size, and the other ones we're not quite sure of yet. We'll work on the spec for those 3 and the 5, and then we'll price those accordingly. We do get volume discounts.
Well, we are always happy to hear that.
Yes.
So our members that maybe are not looking at high volume, but are looking maybe to upgrade, do you guys take trade-ins, or how does that work?
It's a case by case basis, right? It's depends on what they're trading in, I think is a nice way to say it.
Yeah.
If you said, hey, I just bought this brand new shelter, and it's a 10x20. Yeah, we take it tomorrow, right? Because we could probably reuse it, or we can help you find a buyer for it because you need a 12x28 or whatever. We'll work with you on what that specific need is. If you said, hey, I have this one from 1992 that, right during the early days of wireless, we decided to put in this shelter, probably we're gonna let you keep it.
That's fair.
We'll find you a place to properly dispose and responsibly dispose of it, but it's probably destined for disposal. So,
Well, that was honestly, that was my personal next question. What if somebody isn't looking to buy one, but they're looking to dispose of one that is just archaic?
we don't do that,
Mhm.
but we'll give you the folks who do. So we
point them in the right direction.
work with them all around the country, yes, because we very often find that when we get to a site, sometimes we've done the best desktop survey we can do, we get there, and it's like, no
Yeah,
way.
not touching that.
We deal with a lot of old shelters, and there's a few that we're just like, no, that ain't going on the truck. So
Yeah.
that's we have a lot of those.
Well, I heard from Gary that you guys have come across shelters that once they went in, so it's been 10+ years, somebody hasn't touched it.
Yeah.
I mean, what
Yeah.
kind of shape do you find those in?
Well, we
If
call
it's
them
not-
a
if it's
total,
not yours.
we call them a total gut, right?
Yeah.
We call them a total gut for a reason. And I see them every day, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the roof's falling in. Obviously, they hadn't had electrical going for a
Mhm.
while. The HVAC hadn't been going for a while. So again, you have to take it apart.
Mhm.
You have to reconstruct it. Most times, again, occasionally we'll run into a wall issue, but most times the walls are still in decent shape.
Crazy.
Sometimes they're not, and sometimes we have a lot of work to do on those walls,
Mhm.
but most times they're in decent shape. So it's really just about where do you cut out for HVAC? What kind of HVAC systems you're gonna put in?
Mhm.
Do the cutouts work the same as the ones you had before? Where do you want your door? Everybody has a different preference, so.
That's impressive. No, I'm excited to hear it. I mean, not only are you guys cutting the time and like way more than half to get things delivered, but you're cutting costs for our membership as well. And I mean, you guys have big efforts allocated towards going green. I
Yeah.
mean, we all have initiatives.
Yeah.
I mean, no matter how small, whether we're just recycling at the office or, I mean, you guys are just doing such impressive things.
This is what I like to call common sense reuse, right? So it's where it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we're very, very particular in our own factory setting to make sure we're not just throwing everything into the trash heap.
Mhm.
We're trying to recycle fluorescents wherever we can. We're trying to make sure, obviously, everything that comes in on an HVAC, all that fluid's properly drained. We're making sure the HVAC unit itself is properly recycled or restored. Sometimes we don't do a lot of, we don't put a lot. We've only put new HVACs on, but there are others who will take others. We're very particular with generators as well, just to make sure they're all properly taken care of. But we call it common sense reuse. It's not a hard one. You don't have to hug a tree to love our shelters. You just don't have to. It's a very, very easy thing to do.
We are excited to be partnering with you to make that happen. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our members before we wrap things up today?
There's a lot of work going on right now in the industry. I've been pleased to be a part of this industry for 3 decades. It is, I look forward to helping to support each and all the Indatel members as much as I possibly can. I'm one part of the larger equation for them. We certainly realize we're not the headline, but when you are thinking about facilities and shelters, please think of us.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your time this afternoon.
Really appreciate it, Shiloh. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, team, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this afternoon with Jim Patterson and myself with CellSite Solutions. As a reminder, this webinar has been recorded. It'll be distributed after the fact, along with Gary's contact information, should you have any questions about the products and services that CellSite provides. As always, thank you for your business and thank you for your partnership. If you have any questions, just let me know. Have a great day.